All right, everyone, thank you for coming back to Enter the Abyss. It's week 3. Before we actually jumped into the official episode itself, I just wanted to say a couple things. When we recorded the episode a couple weeks ago, I was actually coming down with a pretty good cold, and I had one of the worst toothaches I've had in my entire life and had to get a root canal 2 days later. So if I sound terrible, like I'm disinterested, please forgive me. It was a really rough week, but I really want to dedicate every week to recording, so we wanted to get it done, and I appreciate you guys coming back. So just wanted to have a bit of a disclaimer on that one. And Cleet and I also wanted to give a really big shout-out. We've had 2 episodes posted, and we just hit over 100 views. You guys are amazing. Thank you for all the constant support. We had a listener in France. We've had a listener in the United Kingdom. I mean, this is super exciting. Thank you guys for sharing it, getting us out there. We really, really appreciate you guys.
Thank you guys so much. And, as always, let's enter the abyss.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Enter the Abyss. Thank you for joining us again. Hopefully we have been keeping you intrigued with our stories. We actually have a couple different stories here tonight. I'm changing from more of a folklore perspective to an actual mysterious disappearance case, and I know, Cleet, you kind of have the same thing.
Yep, I will be doing the disappearance of Brandon Lawson tonight.
And I'm going to be talking about the mysterious death and disappearance of Elisa Lamb. Now, the story with Elisa Lamb is kind of interesting because it actually has a video involved with it. It's the notorious elevator video where she was seen alive for the last time, and you had actually shown me that video a while back, Cleet.
Yeah, that elevator video is weird.
It's really bizarre, and we'll post the description in the link. If you haven't seen it, I would check it out. It makes you feel some things. It's weird. But we're going to jump right in and talk about the story of Elisa Lamb. On February 19th, the year 2013, the body of Elisa Lamb was discovered in a water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. To this day, no one knows the cause of death or how her body ended up in the tank. Over the past several years, speculations and rumors have been made, but the story of Elisa is still shrouded in mystery. We will be talking about the infamous elevator video in some pretty good detail, the Cecil Hotel, which is where it took place, which has its own grisly background, and a brief glimpse into the life of Elisa before her disappearance. So Elisa was a 21-year-old Canadian college student. She was actually attending the University of British Columbia, and on January 26, 2013, she arrived in Los Angeles by Amtrak from San Diego. She was actually taking a little bit of a break from school, kind of getting away from her studies and everything, and doing a trip up the West Coast, and reports say that she actually preferred to travel alone. Now, her parents didn't like this. They were like, no, it's kind of dangerous. We want someone to go with you. And she said, it's not a problem. How about this? I'll make you a deal. I'll check in with you every single day, just so you know I'm safe. I mean, they still weren't pleased about it, but they're like, okay, you know what, keep checking in with us. So she continues to travel. She's updating her social media at this point. She's very active on social media. A lot of her pages actually revolve around fashion and clothing, and she was posting a lot of the San Diego Zoo pictures on her profiles. You can kind of follow her on the travels there. But on January 31st, this is the day that she was actually set to check out of the Cecil Hotel. Now, her parents didn't get any sort of check-in from her, so they started to get a little worried. She had checked in every day prior to this point. They contacted the police department. I mean, I think it's a little forward to contact the police. I might call the hotel first and say, hey, is she there? But no, she went ahead and called the police.
Was there any type of things on her Facebook that would have warranted such action?
There is, and we'll get to it in just a little bit here in one of the theories. Because, there were some things that she posted on social media that we'll kind of get into that might have sparked a theory as to what happened. So the police got to the hotel. They're trying to look for her. Now, they searched the Cecil Hotel as much as they legally could. I mean, without probable cause, obviously, they can't check any other rooms in the guests because they don't know what's going on. So they check her room. There's nothing there. They brought dogs in. They searched the whole place. No trace of her at all. So eventually, Lamb's parents actually flew into Los Angeles to help find their daughter. They're extremely worried at this point. They still haven't heard from her. And on February 6th, flyers were actually posted in their neighborhoods and online for help from the public. So they're just reaching out to everyone at this point, seeing if anyone can find her. Now, during their investigations, the police were talking to the hotel staff, and all they really had to say was she'd seen alone most of the time. She wasn't really with anybody. When she first got to the Cecil Hotel, she had roommates running around the 5th floor, but they actually ended up moving her to a new room for certain odd behaviors. I couldn't find out what they were, but she eventually got her own space, but only keeping to herself, never with anyone else. Now, across the street, Katie Orphan, the owner of a bookshop called The Last Bookstore, gave a statement to the news stating it seemed like Lamb had plans to return home and plans to give things to her family members to reconnect with them. She went on to talk about how heavy the books would be during her travels and how many she could buy. So very clear indications that she had plans to return home.
Right. I mean, why would you be buying stuff for your family if you're planning on disappearing?
So she had talked to the bookshop owner about it. So yeah, it's a little weird that would happen.
Did she have like a history of mental illness or anything like that?
She did have some history of depression and bipolar disorder. But again, we'll jump into that here with one of the theories. But now we're going to jump into my favorite part of it. And it's kind of interesting, the video, the elevator video. So on February 15th, so this has been... It's 15 days since she went missing at this point. The Los Angeles Police Department released the notorious elevator video with the last known sighting of Elisa on their website. The video turned this whole investigation around because until this point she hadn't been seen. They posted this video and this thing took off. And this made its way to Canada and China, had tens of millions of views, hundreds of thousands of comments, people poring over it, looking at it, analyzing it, talking about it. And it's interesting. And again, we'll throw the link in there. We're actually going to watch the video now on the podcast and talk about it. So if you want to watch it with us, please do. Click on it. You can see what we're talking about. If not, we'll try and describe it as best we can. But we're going to go ahead and play the video now and talk about it. All right. First thing you notice, it's kind of pixelated. Not very good quality. So she jumps in the elevator here. And the first thing that's weird is she starts to hit every single button on the way down.
That's bizarre.
Right. Now, she backs into the corner. She's not doing anything at this point. She looks completely calm. But now she starts to go towards the door.
She's definitely paranoid, like she's looking for someone coming after her.
Yeah, and she peeked out right and left really quick. Now she's backing up against the control panel. So right here is where people are starting to say she looks like she's being pursued. To me, I don't know, it kind of looks like she's playing a game of hide and seek. I don't know, that's kind of how I feel.
She's hiding.
So now she's peeking out.
Why isn't the door shutting? That's the crazy part.
Right. So she's hit like 6 buttons. The door's not shutting. She's now stepping out the elevator. She's peeking around, and she does that quick little jump out. Did you notice that? Like, it's playful.
Yeah.
And now she sidesteps, steps back into the elevator, back out, and off to the left. Now all we can see is her right arm and a little bit of her skirt that she's wearing. Elevator doors are still open, and she's raising her hand up and seems to place it behind her head.
You don't think she could possibly be talking to someone?
I don't know. I mean, there's no one else in the shot in the entire video. It's just her. Elevator doors are still open. There's nothing blocking the door. There's still all the buttons pushed. She steps back in the elevator. She looks kind of frantic. She starts to push even more buttons, like repeatedly, with both hands. It's bizarre.
It's a very long time for the doors not to shut.
Right, and she's hitting even more buttons, which elevators should be shutting. So now she steps back out of the elevator, off to the left. And this is kind of where, in my opinion, gets a little... She looks like she's talking to somebody now. She's like doing weird gestures with her hands, waving her hands around. But I don't know. I don't get the impression right now that she's being pursued. It's almost like she's just talking to somebody, right? And the elevator doors are still open.
It's just not natural hand movements, though. It's like she's almost dancing.
So she is now just standing still. She's outside the elevator. The elevator doors are still open. And then she turns and walks away out of the camera shot. So, again, she's no longer in the shot. Elevator doors are still open. It's been going on for just under 3 minutes now. Elevator doors are still open. She's not in the camera shot.
Is there like a malfunction with the elevator? That's so strange.
Yeah, I don't know. It's bizarre. Still, now, 3 minutes. And at 3 minutes, the door starts to shut. Elevator door shuts. Video's still playing. She's not in the elevator. She left.
This is the last time anybody ever saw her?
Yeah, so that's the last known sighting. So the elevator door then opens up again. And to me, it looks like it's on the same floor because the background looks the same.
Looks like the lights are still lit.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to tell.
But the door shuts, and this is where it gets different because if you'll notice, the door shuts this time. When the doors open, the outside, it's a different color. The walls are orange instead of like a maroon color.
Oh.
So it looks like it changed floors this time around. Still shutting. So now it opens and the walls are orange.
Right.
So it took almost 4 minutes for the elevator to even move. 3 minutes for the doors to shut, all the while she's hitting these buttons.
Well, it seems like the door is shutting now every, 10 seconds.
Right.
Less than that.
Right. And it's so weird. And her behavior, I mean...
Those hand motions were freaky.
Yeah, because her fingers are all, splayed out, and they're kind of moving around, and...
It reminds me of contortionists.
Yeah.
Where they make those unnatural body movements. Ew.
Yeah. But, I mean, the thing is a lot of rumors online, a lot of people talk about, kind of what you said, is she looks like she's being pursued. At the very first point when she looks out of the elevator, maybe, but I never got the sense of, panic. It almost, to me, kind of seemed, playful, like she's playing hide-and-seek with a child or something.
She looked like she was delusional to a degree.
Right.
She was seeing... She just wasn't all there. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, it's not normal behavior. If I had stepped onto an elevator and saw that, I might be like, I'm going to wait for the next one. I'm going to take the next
stairs.
elevator. Right. I'm taking the stairs. So, if you watch the video with us, you'll know what we're talking about. If not, please click on the link and watch it. We'll post it there. It's insane. But again, this is the last known sighting of Elisa Lam that they had. So, 2 weeks later now, at this point, it's February 19th. A maintenance worker by the name of Santiago Lopez was responding to several complaints from hotel patrons about foul smelling and tasting water coming from the taps and very low water pressure. He made his way to the roof where the 4 1,000-gallon tanks of water that actually provided water to the guest rooms, the kitchen, and even a coffee shop were held, and that's where he found Elisa's body in one of the tanks.
Her poor family, man.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think at this point they're in Los Angeles. I read that they flew in. I don't know if they're still there at this point in time. It's almost 3 weeks. But yeah, I mean, she went missing. They found her in the tank. So he obviously contacted the authorities. Authorities get there, and the tools that they needed to pull her out were too big, so they had to drain the tank completely, cut it open, just to get her body out of the tank. On February 21st, the Los Angeles Coroner's Office released an official statement stating that Elisa Lam had died of accidental drowning. So that's how they stated that she passed away.
How was that accidental, though? That doesn't make sense to me.
Right, and we'll get into it a little bit more because it doesn't make sense. So they stated that her bipolar disorder was a significant factor, which you had asked about earlier if she had any signs of kind of mental disorder. So she was bipolar and had a lot of depression.
One thing that I want to ask the audience... Does bipolarism cause hallucinations or just make you act like that?
I mean, it definitely can. And also, so she was on several medications, and one of the theories that we'll get to, someone actually dove into what it can do. The full report accounted that Lam was found naked with her clothing floating next to her in the tank. They were also coated with a sand-like particulate. Now, her room key and her watch were also found along with her, but her cell phone was never recovered.
I just want to make sure I understand this. Are you saying her body was covered in a sand-like particulate?
I think her clothes were.
Her clothes were, okay.
Yes. Her body had moderate bloating and decomposition, was mostly greenish, with marbling on the abdomen, and had some skin separation, so it seems like she'd been in there for quite some time. No evidence of physical trauma or sexual assault were present, along with no signs of suicide. So it kind of plays along with the whole accidental drowning. It wasn't stated that she did it on purpose, and there was no physical or sexual assault reported. They couldn't completely get a toxicology test due to the lack of blood preservation, but what they did find were traces of consistent prescription medication, plus non-prescription drugs, including ibuprofen. A very small percentage of alcohol, like 0.02%, was present, but no signs of recreational drugs were found.
I wonder if the alcohol was causing her to act weird.
But it's 0.02, like nothing.
Would that be at the time of death? How long did it take her from her to get to the elevator to the water tank?
Well, exactly. But, I mean, again, the toxicology report was, done 2 weeks after they found her. So 0.02% in her blood still at that point in time. We don't know.
Yeah.
But there were no signs of recreational drugs, which a lot of people said, oh, she's tripping on something. She's clearly on a drug. There was no signs of it at all in her bloodstream. So they have Lam's body now. They have the video being released, but it still doesn't explain how she even got to the water tank. Because again, she leaves the camera. That's it. That's the last time we saw of her. So Santiago, the man who found her, went on to describe what effort it took to even get to the water tank in the first place. Okay. So what he stated that he had to take the elevator up 15 levels, then take the stairs up to the roof. In order to get to the roof, he had to first disable the alarm system and climb up to the platform where the water tanks were held. He then had to climb a ladder to the top of the main tank. He stated that when he got to the water tank, he noticed that the hatch to the tank was actually open, and upon looking inside is where he found a woman lying face up in the water roughly 12 inches from the top of the tank.
And wouldn't they lock up the tank? That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, they're locked, which is kind of what he said is, look, it would have been extremely difficult for her to make her way up to the roof.
She didn't trip the alarm.
No alarms went off. Open the water tank, get in on her own. There's no feasible way that can happen.
Doesn't make sense.
Right. So the chief engineer of the hotel actually stated that it would have been extremely difficult because if the alarm were to sound, it would have sounded on the top 2 floors of the hotel along with the front desk. So people would have known had the alarms been triggered. But no alarms went off. That's it. I mean, it doesn't make sense that she would have made her way up there herself. So with all this being said, Elisa's parents just weren't happy with the whole situation and filed a wrongful death suit against the Cecil Hotel in the month of September, claiming that the hotel failed to inspect and seek out hazards in the hotel that presented an unreasonable risk of danger to Lamb and other hotel guests. Now, the hotel fought the suit, essentially saying that they had no reason to think that someone would be able to get into the water tanks, right? The Los Angeles Superior Court judge ruled that the death of Elisa Lam was unforeseeable since it happened in an area that guests weren't allowed to access. So this actually caused the suit to be dismissed and wasn't actually carried out further.
That's bullshit.
So, I mean, if I were her parents, yeah, same thing. Like, dude, how did this even happen? She ended up in your water tank. I mean, I would have done the same thing.
There has to be some type of negligence on the hotel's part, in my opinion.
Yeah. And now we're going to jump into the theories. So the first theory that we're going to talk about is actually something you've been bringing up throughout the podcast, Cleet, and that's on the matter of her depression and bipolar disorder. So one theory obviously suggests that because of her depression and bipolar disorder, she may have been going through an episode on the video. That her medications were off, something was wrong, and she was clearly going through some kind of disorder withdrawal. According to Lamb's parents, Elisa had no history or attempts of suicide, but claimed that she had previously gone missing for a short period of time. So this isn't the first time she's vanished, but
I need some more details on that. That's just so vague.
That's all they said. After the toxicology report was released, internet sleuths or detectives started going crazy over the evidence in hopes to solve what happened. One sleuth on Reddit actually pointed out 3 key observations. The first, Elisa took at least one antidepressant that day. Second, she had taken her second antidepressant along with a mood stabilizer recently on another day. And third, she did not take her antipsychotic recently. With those conclusions, it appeared that Elisa had not been taking her medications properly, which can cause manic side effects. This theory could explain the strange behavior on the video. This also calls back to her previous roommate's comments about her strange behavior.
And I gotta say something. I mean, going back to what you previously said, her parents called the police right away. To me, that means like they know something, like she's gone manic or crazy at one point in her past.
Exactly. And they were worried about her traveling alone. So I'm thinking they've got a little bit more than they were letting on. Like, hey, she can't be alone. She can't travel away by herself. And if she does, she needs to contact us because this is something that probably happens often, maybe? I don't know. The second theory states that she had a case of tuberculosis. It's a little far-fetched. Some claim that she may have been sick with tuberculosis as there was an outbreak around the time of Elisa's death which affected thousands of people around the Cecil Hotel. Something really crazy, and this is no bullshit, honest to God. The test used to identify tuberculosis is called Lam-Elisa.
That's weird.
Literally. And I'm not going to get into the medical name, but Google it. I swear to God, it's there. Lam-Elisa. Now, this theory didn't really stand as the toxicology found no signs of tuberculosis. I mean, they did the toxicology. There's no signs of it. But I thought that was kind of weird.
Seems like a coincidence, but definitely a stretch.
Yeah, it's a stretch. Okay, the next one is that she was murdered, right? Because this, to me, seems the most likely because with the elevator video, theory stated that she was being pursued because of her behavior. She kept peeking out of the elevator. She was hiding in the corners of the elevator. She really was trying to get anywhere because she's smashing these buttons, right? Theories state that she may have been murdered by a hotel worker who had access to bypass the alarms to get to the roof.
That makes sense.
Well, I mean, it's either hotel negligence or someone knew how to get past the alarms. No one else appears on the video, and I personally don't think that this looks like she was being pursued.
You know what? If it was a hotel worker, they would know the camera views and would know not to go in front of the elevator.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Is no one appeared on the video, but I think that's on purpose.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're on the video, you're a prime suspect. I mean, no one else appears in the video in the 4-minute time frame. Now, again, to me, she didn't really look freaked out. She just kind of looked like she was going through something, but I don't think that she was ever being completely pursued. However, she did have a Tumblr blog, and on this Tumblr blog, she had mentioned something about having trouble with creepers in the hotel. Now, this pointed out the fact that she might have had someone that may have been following or stalking her. The odd thing about this, because I mentioned her cell phone was never recovered, her Tumblr profile continued to update after her death.
What? What do you mean it kept updating?
Well, there's two things that could have happened. So Tumblr actually has a queue option that will actually allow posts to automatically publish when their user is away. So that's one option, but a lot of people are saying that whoever killed her took her phone and has been updating her Tumblr profile.
That's crazy.
Yeah. On her profile, because you had asked me earlier if she had anything that she had posted on her social media accounts that made her sound like she was going through something. There were a couple ominous posts that she mentioned that she was actually closing out her account, stepping away for a while, but then would open up another account completely revolved around fashion. I mean, she was definitely going through some hard times. The last theory is pointed directly towards the Cecil Hotel itself due to its violent and mysterious background. People are saying that it could be paranormal because since its grand opening in the 1920s, it has been the location of more than a dozen murders and suicides in this hotel, including Richard Ramirez, who is actually known as the Night Stalker, who actually lived there during his murder spree, and is home to the murder of the Black Dahlia. I'm sure you've heard of the Black Dahlia.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm definitely going to be covering those in future episodes.
That guy was a butcher.
Yeah, but the Cecil Hotel has this crazy history of things like this going on. In all that has happened, the Cecil is said to be extremely haunted, with several guests claiming to have been choked by thin air and a woman mysteriously dying by being choked, with the suspect never being found. So people stated that she was probably possessed. Demonic possession came in because of its haunted background, right? Richard Ramirez had these pacts with the devil, so it could have been paranormal. One of my favorite things, though, is that people were saying that she may have been playing the elevator game. Have you heard about the elevator game, Cleet?
I think I've heard of it, but I have no idea what it is.
I didn't either until I stumbled across it, but if done correctly, it's supposed to transport you to another dimension.
What?
Yeah, the elevators. And I have the list of rules here. We're going to go through them. So, first and foremost, you must be in a 10-plus story building and in the elevator alone. If someone happens to get in the elevator with you, it's not going to work. So there's 9 rules. Number 1, you have to get on the elevator on the first floor. Then you have to press 4, and when you reach the 4th floor, don't get out, but press 2. When you reach the 2nd floor, press 6. When you reach the 6th floor, press 2. When you reach the 2nd floor, press 10. When you reach the 10th floor, press 5. Now, finally, when you hit the 5th floor, a girl is going to enter the elevator. She's not human. You're not supposed to talk or look at her. If you do, she will take you away forever. Now, you press 1. If the elevator goes up to the 10th floor instead, you have succeeded. You will then be in another world where you are the only one there. If you get off on the 10th floor, the girl will ask you, where are you going? But you're not supposed to talk to her, not supposed to acknowledge her, so just ignore her. At this point in time, you're in another dimension. It's awesome. Sounds great, right? How do you get back? Well, number 1, if the woman doesn't get on, and if you don't get off on the 10th floor, you're good. If you don't get off on the 10th floor, then press 1. If it doesn't go, keep on pressing it until it works.
I bet it goes to Skinwalker Ranch.
Probably.
I feel like we got an idea for a video episode in the future.
I am curious, though, for those that are listening, I want to hear about your interdimensional travels in the elevator game, so please let us know where you've been. I'm curious about that. But the elevator game, some people are saying, oh, she was playing it, but essentially, theories state that when you return to the normal dimension, you're delusional and confused, which is why she may have been acting as erratic as she was, because she just got back and didn't know what was going on. Super far-fetched, I understand, but essentially, this is one of those cases where we have the who, we have the what, but we don't know the why. We don't know why she was there, if anyone put her there. We just don't know.
My bet is on that she got murdered. If I were a gambler, I'd put my chips on that.
Yeah. You think it was someone on, like, the inside job, like someone at the hotel?
I just feel like that camera shot, you know? If someone was there and she was talking to someone and they were smart enough not to get in the elevator shot, had it been an employee there.
I agree. Now, of course, with this case, I mean, this happened in 2013. It's been 7 years at this point, almost to the week. Like, a week ago today, almost, is when it happened. So, if you have a theory that you like, feel free to leave us a comment on our pages. We definitely want to hear about it. But that is my story of the disappearance of Elisa Lam.
Before you finish this, didn't you tell me that the water source was going to a coffee shop with the gross water?
I did, yes. Unfortunately.
That's disgusting. You're like, man, my coffee tastes weird. What beans did they use? Ugh.
Yeah. No, and she was probably in the tank for probably a week, so
God.
that's a lot of coffee.
Ugh. Think about that next time you guys are drinking coffee at Starbucks, okay? All right. I'm going to go over the disappearance of Brandon Lawson. Britton, have you heard of Brandon Lawson?
This one I actually have not heard of.
There's so much details in this story. I had to do so much research and make sure I had all the time frames right, so bear with me. For you to fully understand this, you just have to have the whole picture. This story is odd as it is sad. It involves a bizarre 911 call, an unhelpful sheriff's department, a family with a broken heart. So let's jump in. So Brandon Lawson disappeared at age 26. He was from San Angelo, Texas, a small town with a population of 100,000 people. He was a father of 4 children, 3 girls and 1 boy, and had a common-law wife named Ledessa Lofton, whom he had been with for 10 years. They were high school sweethearts and were described as best friends. He was an oil field worker, and his close relatives said that he was a family man who loved his kids more than anything else. Brandon was 5 foot 9 inches tall and weighing approximately 230 pounds. He was Caucasian male with brown hair and blue eyes. Lawson has multiple tattoos on his arms and has a scar on his chin and left knee, and one of his ears is pierced. At the time of his disappearance, Lawson was wearing a yellow shirt, camouflage print shorts, and white 2013 Air Max shoes.
I feel like this is the start of any of those crime shows.
I got so much information on this, man. Let's just jump into it. So, on the evening of August 8th, 2013, Brandon and Ledessa got into a heated argument. The nature of this argument is unknown, but there's been a pattern of either Brandon or Ledessa leaving the home in these situations to cool off for around 30 minutes. During this fight, Brandon becomes upset and leaves the house. He calls his father, Brad, to let him know that he's coming to crash at his place for the night. Brad, his father, tells him to cool off and go back to his family. His father lives in Crowley, Texas, which is approximately 247 miles away, or 4 hours. Ledessa is reported to have called him as well and told him to go home, and they'll work it out, or go to his brother Kyle's house, which is about 5 minutes away. Brandon disregarded this and started heading to his father's home at 11:54 p.m. The question is, why would Brandon choose his father's home versus his brother's? His brother Kyle's house is only 5 minutes away. I mean, why do the 4-hour drive?
I don't know, but I do want to point out as well, I mean, you and I pick pretty similar topics from the same page, but I didn't realize these both happened in 2013.
I didn't realize that either.
That's intense.
Yeah. So, Ledessa calls Brandon's brother Kyle at 12:10, suggesting this fight may have been a big deal, or Brandon could have been under the influence of something when he drove away. It's just not a casual fight. It's literally 15 minutes after he leaves. She calls his brother and says, hey, you need to call him and get him to come back.
He just pounded some whiskey and got behind the wheel.
It could have happened, or it could have been something worse. It could have been hardcore drugs. We'll get into that later. This is what caused the snowball effect. One spur-of-the-moment decision would determine Brandon's grisly fate. Instead of taking Highway 67, he decided to take Highway 277, a very rural, desolate road. About 40 miles into his journey at 12:30 p.m., Brandon calls his brother Kyle to tell him that he's run out of gas and needs help. He's a quarter of a mile away from a rest stop. Kyle and his girlfriend Audrey call Ledessa to ask to borrow their gas can to bring to Brandon. Ledessa told them she will leave the can on the porch and she's going to have a shower and head to bed. Ledessa realizes that Brandon took all the cell phone chargers with him, so she puts her phone in her car to charge and ends up going to bed.
That's an odd thing to bring with you.
Yeah, I think it's strange that she had no chargers.
I'm just going to take all the chargers. Good luck.
Kind of makes sense to me. I mean, usually I only have one charger on me. I can relate to this just a little bit. I've been in situations where I've had to put my phone in my car to charge.
I guess I just need to know how many chargers. When they say that he took all the chargers, I'm thinking 7 of them.
Yeah.
Just wrapping around good luck, bucker.
The more I listen to this family, I've done my research, it feels like they don't handle money well, neither does his brother Kyle.
Oh.
Because they're living paycheck to paycheck, which we'll get into later.
Money will get you.
But during this night, and this is actually really sad, Brandon places 3 calls to Ledessa, but no voicemails were left. The calls took place at 12:34, 12:36, and 12:48. Spoiler alert, Brandon isn't seen after this night. Could you imagine being Ledessa and waking up and knowing, at least later down the road, that he tried to reach out to her and that would have been the last time she would have been able to speak to him?
I would imagine right now that she probably still has that call log somewhere. Like she holds on to that.
That just breaks my heart. I mean, what if she picked up that call at 12:48?
Just
what type
one
of
those
information would she have gotten? During this time, Kyle and Audrey are driving toward Brandon. He realizes that his paycheck hasn't cleared and cannot fill the gas can, but figures once he picks up Brandon, he can take him to the gas station to fill up the can. This is around the time things get weird. At approximately 12:54, Brandon calls 911. This call is almost incomprehensible. There have been multiple attempts to slow down the audio or other editing tricks to determine what is said. What we do know is Brandon sounds panicked in his speech. I will play the unaltered version for you now.
911 emergency.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. The Saper just flew some guys over. Right here going towards Javelin on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here that got taken to the woods. Please hurry.
Okay, now run that by me.
We're not talking to him. I actually ran into him.
Ah, you ran into him. Okay.
Got the first guy.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yeah, no, I need the cops.
Okay. Is anybody hurt? Hello? Hello? Hello?
So, Britton, I've listened to this call probably at least 10 times at this point. Was there anything that you got out of that?
No, absolutely not. That was my first time hearing it, and that's bizarre. It's weird. I mean, I got run out of gas is the only thing I think I picked up on.
Did you hear him say, "We need the cops"?
No.
What do you feel about his speech patterns?
He sounded panicked.
I agree with that.
It sounded like he needed someone right away. But again, all I picked up on was run out of gas. I didn't catch anything else. I was trying hard, too. I couldn't pick up on anything.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and play a slowed down version of this phone call.
Oh, shit.
All right, here it goes.
911 emergency.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. The Saper just flew some guys over. Right here going towards Javelin on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here that got taken to the woods. Please hurry.
Okay, now run that by me.
We're not talking to him. I actually ran into him.
Ah, you ran into him. Okay.
Got the first guy.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yeah, no, I need the cops.
Okay. Is anybody hurt? Hello?
All right. Did you catch anything out of that?
I mean, I picked up on a couple things more. I did hear, I need the cops. And then she says, do you need an ambulance? And then he says, nothing. Or
Right.
no, he says, no, I need the cops. And then, is anyone hurt? And then nothing.
Right. So I went ahead and I made an interpretation of the audio. I'm not saying this is 100% correct, and I will admit that I did go out on the web and get some help on this. But this is what I heard. Yeah, I'm in the middle of a field. A scraper just pulled some guys over right here, going towards Abilene on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There is one car here and got chased into the woods. Please hurry. The operator asks him to repeat himself, and it sounds like he says, there is one guy talking to him. I totally ran into him. The operator now thinks she's dealing with a car accident and repeats that he ran into him. Then Brandon says, just the first guy. She then asks if he needs an ambulance, which Brandon replies with, no, I need the cops. For those of you who don't know, scraper is generally a term for a policeman on the side of the road. So people have thought that maybe he's talking about a police or someone in the police that is pulling people over. Although that's strange that he would call 911 in regards to that.
And that he needs more cops.
Yeah, this whole call is super bizarre. So some people think his speech indicates he was under the influence of something during this call. This assertion is almost impossible to prove, and others point out that he may have come across something terrible and is full of adrenaline, which is what you were saying earlier, Britton. I completely agree with that. The only thing that we do know is that after running out of gas while walking down that road, Brandon walked into something strange, or something weird happened while he was waiting in his truck. Something pointed out about this call is the 911 operator doesn't ask for his name or any other vital information. That is typically standard procedure. After doing some digging, it was discovered that Coke County has nurses answering these phone calls at a nursing home.
So that was a nurse?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a population of 100,000 people, so it's kind of a backwoods area.
I was going to say, even 100,000 people is still quite a bit. If you have nurses answering the line,
they could do a better job. But
absolutely.
This explains the poor handling of the call. And the funny thing is, it's not really funny, but the family also requested a copy of this call, and the sheriff's department would drag their feet, and it took them a month to provide it to them. Definitely outside of the norm of any type of investigation.
Well, I'm sure they listened to it and were embarrassed because, like you said, they missed all these protocols.
Well, I'm curious because, and we'll go into this later, the sheriff that comes out there, the sheriff's deputy, is coming out in regards of a different call. So I'm curious if, because she really didn't get a lot of the information from him at the beginning, that they didn't know where to send the police to.
Yeah.
To go into this again, at 1:02 a.m., a trucker calls 911 to report a vehicle on the side of the road that is parked haphazardly. This is when they send out a deputy to investigate the situation. During this time, Kyle is calling Brandon and is trying to get a hold of where his truck is. What is the exact location on this highway? Oddly, they are not able to get a hold of Brandon as there is a terrible reception and the calls keep getting dropped. He does, however, get a hold of him for a small amount of time, in which he hears Brandon say, "I'm 10 minutes away, hurry up and get here. I'm bleeding."
Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is getting pretty intense. Like,
So-
if my brother was saying that to me,
Yeah,
ugh.
you're white-knuckling it all the way to him.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, I'd be driving as fast as I could.
So, okay, so then he sounds like he may be under the influence. Sounds like he's panicked, but now he's saying he's bleeding.
I mean, something happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something has happened at this point. Kyle and Audrey arrive at the abandoned truck at 1:10 a.m. and find a Coke County Sheriff Deputy Neal informing them that they have received a call about a vehicle on the side of the road. Kyle gets a call from Brandon at the same time that he's on the site with a truck. And Brandon says, "I'm in the field." The deputy does a quick sweep of the place and determines there's no damage to the truck and the keys and wallet are not inside. Neal does not mention the 911 call, as Kyle and Audrey were not aware of it. Sadly, they don't find this out until much later when checking into Brandon's phone history. Due to the limited information, Kyle doesn't divulge any information to the deputy about Brandon being the person that was driving the truck, or that he was bleeding, or that he could possibly be nearby. This was due to Brandon having an outstanding warrant for his arrest, and didn't want him to get in trouble with law enforcement. This warrant was a felony for possession of a controlled substance.
Okay. So now it's starting to make a little bit of sense, I guess. Because, I mean, I was going to ask you, like, why isn't he telling him about this? I just got off the phone with him, and that makes sense now.
All right. So Kyle isn't communicating to the police, and the police isn't communicating with Kyle. Now, Brandon's comments have led people to conclude that he was hiding from the police. However, one thing that is in direct contradiction of this is he called them earlier and asked specifically for the police.
I need more police.
At 1:18, while Audrey and Kyle are on the site with Deputy Neal, she sends Brandon a text that a cop is by his car. Now, this is just telling him, hey, don't show up here because we don't want you to get arrested. Deputy Neal ends up putting the hazard lights on the truck, puts in an order for a tow truck in the morning, and leaves. After this, Kyle and Audrey can't find Brandon. They're looking around. They can't find him in any bushes hiding or anything like that, so they drive down the road looking for Brandon. Brandon calls Audrey again. She would state that Brandon said, "I am bleeding," and that is all she could make out due to bad reception and the call dropped. Kyle calls Ladessa, but the phone is still in her car. He then draws in a bunch of coworkers and they start searching for Brandon. Kyle continually keeps calling Brandon, but he never picks up after this. At 3 a.m., the calls start going straight to voicemail.
Oh, Jesus.
You know something's up here. Ugh.
So all they know is he's out in this field. He's bleeding. His phone's dead. They can't get a hold of Ladessa. I'd be panicking at this point. If it was my brother out in the field, I'm like, yeah, dude, I got to find you, man.
What do you do, man? What do you do? They keep searching. At 4:30 a.m., Ledessa wakes up to find all the missing calls. She immediately calls Brandon and it goes straight to voicemail. She then later calls Kyle, who informs her about the situation. Kyle has decided to leave the gas can in the truck and will go back to sleep for a little bit and start searching when the sun comes up. Ledessa calls the sheriff department to see if they have found Brandon, but they have not. At 7 a.m., Kyle returns to the truck, fills the gas tank as his check is cleared. He then calls the police and explains the whole situation. Basically tells them about the calls and just comes clean with everything.
I mean, at this point in time, if he's in the field bleeding, put the warrant aside. If he needs help, talk about it.
Right, exactly. The response from law enforcement is strange. They assume that Brandon has fled due to his outstanding warrant and drag their feet at every opportunity. The first search is done by plane, which Ledessa pays out of her own pocket because the police force is refusing to do it. Brandon's family also start doing private searches with volunteers in that area, but were limited due to some landowners refusing to let them search their property. The police don't conduct their official search until August 16th, a full 8 days after Brandon's disappearance. The search is criticized, being that they used infrared cameras, which can only find people that are alive.
Yeah.
So if he's missing in the woods, again, this is like a very rural area. 8 days later, he's probably going to be dead.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's the time frame that someone goes missing? 72 hours, isn't it?
Yeah, no, they definitely missed a very pivotal window. Then 13 days later, after that, so almost about 20 days, the police finally conduct a ground search. This is a very thorough search, and there are plenty of searches after this, but nothing is found. No evidence of where he could have possibly been. The last search happened on October 24th, and the sheriff's department stated that no searches will happen again until further evidence is discovered. There have been some bitter disputes with Brandon's family and the local sheriff's department. They accused the sheriff of being part of a misinformation campaign. The sheriff's wife owns a local newspaper called the Observer Enterprise, and they put out several stories about Brandon that are questionable. For example, the cell phone ping indicated that Brandon was 3 miles away from his truck in an unsearched area. Brandon's family wants that area searched, but they are refusing and saying that isn't new evidence, posting that in the paper.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's strange. They would also put up a narrative in the paper that Brandon was a fleeing felon, even though they don't have evidence for that. His credit cards, his bank accounts have never been withdrawn or used, and no one's ever seen him to this day. The family is also stating that the sheriff's department is actively deterring them from searching for Brandon. They report on several occasions that they were told not to search property that they weren't given permission. They claim that they have never searched a property without consent, so it just seemed like an underlying threat. There is even a specific example of Brad, again Brandon's father, was riding an ATV around the area that Brandon disappeared with his cell phone ping when a sheriff's deputy pulled up. Brad asked the deputy what he was doing, and he said that he was making sure he didn't trespass on property he wasn't supposed to.
Jesus. Okay, I'd be like, dude, fuck off. I'm trying to find my brother.
Right?
Literally.
I mean, it's like a show of force, you know? They're just there and they're threatening and they're just trying to deter you from doing that search. It's strange. I don't know. Now let's jump into the theories. The first theory is thinking that Brandon was on drugs or trying to pick up some drugs. This is supported by the fact of his warrant for possession of an illegal substance. One thing that is a hole in this theory, though, is that warrant was issued 8 years ago. It's not like that this is a recent occurrence.
How long do warrants last?
Forever.
Oh.
I mean, I don't know if that's the right answer. Viewers answer this. It is theorized when he ran out of gas, he was still completely out of his mind. During this disorientation, he wandered deep into the woods. Some have suggested when he did call 911, it was less about what he was seeing and more about what was going on in his head during this drug bender. During this episode, he would have gotten injured, then possibly just died from exposure deep in the woods. So let's jump into the next theory, and this is very similar. People think that Brandon may have been involved in the drug trade because it sounded like he may have ran into someone he shouldn't have. This could have been an old associate where he was planning to pick up drugs from, and for whatever reason, this associate had some ill will for him and set him up.
Okay. So a lot of it's drug related.
Right. A lot of this is drug related. Another theory, and this one is, I don't like this theory at all, to be honest with you. So once Brandon ran out of gas, he walked to the rest stop that was a quarter mile down the road. during which he found himself lost. During the phone call, he references bleeding, and these people point out that this could be from some brush or tripping in the woods. Brandon unknowingly walked deeper into the woods, got lost or injured, and never made it out. What I really don't like about this series, why wouldn't he just walk down the road? Like, why would he go into the woods in the first place?
Yeah.
And the 911 call just, to me, just doesn't support this at all, in my opinion, if he wasn't on drugs.
And I wouldn't reference bleeding if I, like, scrape myself on a brush. Like, if you're scraping yourself, fine, but, like, if I tell you I'm bleeding.
Right. I'd imagine,
death.
like, profusely bleeding. I
like
agree.
I cut my
like
artery.
A branch
in,
like, your stomach.
spraying all over this field.
All right, next theory, and this one I think is a little bit more possible, and these people have different interpretations of the audio that we played, but they're saying that, hey, there's a lot of wildlife in the area that could have taken his life. There's a lot of wild boars in there and poisonous snakes. The boar theory, I don't know if you've heard of this, but boars can be super aggressive if you run into them.
Oh, yeah, they're very aggressive.
And there have been situations where they have just straight up gored people. The idea is maybe he's walking down the road. If you remember, they said they're on both sides.
Yeah.
He could have been talking about maybe wild boars, chased him into the woods, gored him, and he got killed.
Maybe that's what he meant by scraper. He was talking about a boar.
Yeah. Again, then there's the snake example, which I don't think is very likely, again, just because it doesn't fit with the 911 theory. But if he got bit, became delirious, and ran into the woods. The reason why I don't think this is plausible is, where's his body? People do say there's a lot of areas where he could have fallen into that would have been hard to find him, but I don't really subscribe to this theory. The next theory, which again, this is getting more plausible, he could have been killed by one of the local landowners.
For trespassing.
Yeah, for trespassing. In these areas, especially because they're rural, no judgment here, but some people are pretty protective of their land.
They shoot first, ask later.
Yeah, I mean, they could, and if you know the land, if you own a lot of land, you shoot somebody, you're not going to want to go to jail, right?
Of course not.
So you just hide the body in part of the land that you know that they're not going to find it.
And I think that they know that the police are going to be like, look, you can't search this property. It's private. So it's kind of like you got away with it.
Yeah. Detractors of this theory would be, how would someone find him in the middle of the night? Again, this place is super rural, probably wandering out there in the middle of the night. It's plausible, but I don't think it's really likely. The next theory is what the local law enforcement put out there. And they believe he either ran away to start a new life or just run away from his outstanding warrant. Problem with this theory is this warrant has been out for his arrest for 8 years.
Right.
Brandon wasn't hiding. Like, he had his address out. They could have literally came to his house at any point in time and arrested him.
He could have ran away year 1 of his warrant, 2,
right.
3. it took him 8 years to run, and it didn't sound like he had a terrible life.
He wasn't even aware of the warrant till a few weeks prior to his disappearance. Ledessa was saying that he was saving up for a lawyer to get all this figured out. Again, it's not like you're going to be like, hey, it's been 8 years, I have a warrant, peace out, I'm out of here.
And if he's saving up to get it taken care of, why would he run?
Not to mention his family said he really loved his kids. And again, why would he call 911 and specifically ask for the cops if he was planning on disappearing?
Yeah, that one doesn't really
make
sense.
It seems plausible on its face, but if you go into the details, it just doesn't make sense as a whole. The next theory that people put up there is that Brandon fled that night and his family was in on it or currently knows his whereabouts, or someone in his family killed him.
Oh.
The problem here again is, why is he fleeing? Outside of wanting to start a new life. Again, if someone in his family killed him, this had to have been pretty elaborate. It couldn't have just been, in my opinion, one person. Kyle and Audrey were together the whole time. I don't know why Ledessa would want him dead. She paid a lot of money to do the private searches. In fact, she basically used all her money and had to move back to her hometown so she could be supported with her parents again.
Yeah.
So I just don't think that adds up. Now I'm going to go into what I think is most likely, and I'm going to end with what I think. Here's the next theory. Brandon stumbled on something the police were doing illegal and was murdered or chased in the woods or got lost during that chase. The call possibly refers to a state trooper shot someone and that he's being chased in the woods. The hole in this theory is, why wouldn't he just say someone was trying to kill him? Or why would he even try to call the sheriff's department if he's running from the police?
Yeah. I don't know. In times of panic, though, you're not really in your right mind, because that call, he sounds completely out of it. Whether it be drugs, whether it be adrenaline, whether it be just complete panic, he doesn't sound in his right mind.
I agree. And I think the one thing that really supports this theory is, why is the sheriff's department so unwilling to help? Are they just incompetent, or are they trying to hide something?
Right.
The last theory that I'll throw out here is Brandon came across someone doing something illegal and he got murdered. Either he walked in on something illegal or caught a ride with someone who was doing something illegal. He told his brother that he was 10 minutes up the road. This isn't something you usually say if you're walking. So, for example, if I'm driving to your house, Britton, or let's just say I'm going to your house and I say I'm 10 minutes away, generally that means car miles. I think that's a flimsy explanation, but I just figured I'd throw that out there. This is generally the theory that I actually subscribe to. I think that, again, he ran across something illegal. They didn't want him to report it, so they just straight up murdered him. And then they put his body somewhere else where they know it wouldn't be found.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going with. One thing that I'm going to end this with is, if anyone has any information regarding this case, please call Crime Stoppers, the FBI, or your local police. Hopefully you guys like this episode. If you guys have any requests, any topics that you want us to do going forward, send an email. I'll let you take care of this. Briefly,
Send it to our email, entertheabysspod@gmail.com. Again, we are on Instagram at entertheabysspod and Facebook, entertheabysspod. But yeah, we really want to hear from you guys. We love doing research. We do this every week. We want to make sure that we don't really want to follow any kind of patterns. We just anything that interests us. But if you guys have something you really want us to cover, please send it to us. We're more than happy. We will do all the research. But thank you again for joining us. Until next time, thanks for entering the abyss.